Remember when you used to pick up a book and read and get lost in the story for hours, and now picking up a novel feels like the hardest thing to do, or something that you've been procrastinating for a very long time. It seems like everything is competing for your attention, from your phone, ads on the train, on the laundromat, TV at home, and everything else other than books that you've thought about reading but have pushed it to the back burner of your head. This doesn't happen because there are lack of good novels, good stories, good books to read. This actually happens because we're just not finding the right books that speak to us to read. Hi friends, my name is Mohammed, and in this channel we talk about writing, review books, and explore tools and habits that make the life of busy people more creative. And in this video I'm going to talk about the 5 books that helped me love reading again and get back to the habit after a long break. Now, as a disclaimer, these books helped me because of my personal experience fall in love or get back to the reading habit, and they might help you as well. I've recommended one of these books to many people and I've never heard bad feedback about them. So from the hundreds and hundreds of books that I've read for the past 10 years, here is my best 5. And just before I talk about the first book, I want to explore the root cause of the problem. Why do we stop reading even though we are people who generally read a lot? And parts of it, we do stop reading the right books or the books that talks about our experiences, and this sometimes happens through school. I have a colleague of mine who told me that she used to read for hours, delays falling asleep or waking up late for school when she was a teenager because she was reading books. But then she got to grad school and she was forced to read books that she hated, and after graduating she stopped reading, period. And school does that to you. All those reading requirements, all these boring books that might be interested for some people, but for you they might not. And to be honest, when I was in college, I felt that. I felt like when I was reading, even for some of my literature classes, I hated the books that I was reading. I was not connecting with them, and it's not because they were bad books or bad written books. They were good books, but they were just not my cup of tea. So what I would do, I would supplement reading in the weekends or later at night with books that I really enjoy, and it was the only way for me to keep up with the reading habit. And especially during breaks, spring break, winter break, the summers, that's when I used to go heavy on reading, because I know that reading habit can only be maintained if I read books that I enjoyed. Other causes are related to our modern style of living. It's just too fast-paced. We have deliveries 2 days, we get things with a click of a button. Our phones are constantly there calling for our attention throughout those apps that are literally paying millions of dollars so that they can keep us in them. And to be honest, scrolling on social media is way more rewarding to the brain than reading a book. You can't compare taking a 15-minute walk or reading for 15 minutes to scrolling for an hour on social media. You just come out of the experience very different, feeling or seeing yourself very differently. Is building a reading habit hard? It is. Is it valuable and necessary, especially in the time that we are living in right now? Yes. I'm not calling to just, get off social media and stop watching TV and just read, but I'm saying that some of the time that we are spending on social media should be dedicated for at least reading. It's just a way more worthy of an activity and way more rewarding. You will learn much more, and you will explore many more experiences through reading other characters' lives than just scrolling. So with that said, let's start with the first book, and I want to start with Mohsen Hamad, Exit West. A lot of people have never heard this book, or if you heard about it, you heard Barack Obama recommending it in one of his lists when he was a president, and it's about a place that is not named. It's just about a city that's going through war, and there is a love story in it, and there is a magical realism to it because it's also about migration, but the migration that's inside the story is of these characters finding these doors that lead from one country to another. So there's a lot about displacement, about migration, about self-identity, and about love. And it's not like the gimmicky type of love. This is sort of the style of Hemingway writing. Is clear, and Mohsen Hamad, I've read, when I started reading his books, I literally went through each and every single thing he wrote in a 2-month period, because his writing is so simple, his writing is so accessible, and his storytelling skills are they're just magical. And to be quite honest, part of the reason I fell in love with this book is because I am an immigrant. My parents are immigrants, so I can relate to the experience of the displacement and seeing your country at war, because my country was at war. Thankfully, right now it is not. And so it related to me at a very personal level, but I also can see how a lot of other people will enjoy it as well, because the writing is just good. So if you're into those sort of heavy topics and you want to add an element of magical realism, this is a book for you to read. The second book, and is a book that I actually read recently, which was very late, is Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye. Now this book needs no introduction. The Bluest Eye is about this girl, Piccola, who thinks that having blue eyes is a sign of beauty or something that she is seeking. It criticizes our beauty standards. It criticizes how we make, as a society, black people in particular, feel about their hair, about their look, about their skill less beautiful. And as for the story, I enjoyed it immensely. But to be quite honest, and maybe I'm a nerd because I also mentioned this about Exit West, is that I enjoyed the poetic writing of Toni Morrison. Her writing is literally poetry in fiction. That's what it is. It's not prose that are just, short sentences and punchy and like verb oriented and like action oriented. It's not. It's very poetry oriented. I literally, what I would do, I would read sometimes and I would land on a sentence, I would underline it and read it multiple times just because of the sound of the sentence. It was literally like music. And then combine this with the story of Piccola and the character building and the world building and the transformation that happens at the end. It just makes the book a well-rounded book for you to enjoy. And as far as relating to the book, what it made me think about, which is funny and sad, think about it right now. When I was younger, I was born and grew up in Yemen, and I have very curly hair, and when it's long, it's very curly and tangly. So what I would do when I was younger, maybe like around 10, 11 years old, I would go to the barber and he would do this hair relaxer for me and it will make it straight. I'm talking about you turning a very tangly, curly hair into just like straight. And it would stay there for about a week or so, and then I would do it again. And I ended up, and instead of going to the barber, I ended up buying the product. And then I remember it just became a habit of mine of just like every week or so, or every other week, I would do this product. Until one day, I overdid it. So I did a lot of the product and I left it for too long because it was the day before the holiday and I wanted to look my best. And literally my hair after washing it off was falling like crazy. I would pour my hands through my hair and I would see just like hundreds of hair on my head, and I thought I was just gonna go bald. I cried and I swore I would never use the product again, and I didn't. And the desire of the main character in The Bluest Eye to have blue eyes because she thinks this is the sign of beauty, because for in her world and also in my world, if you're white with blue eyes and with straight long hair, then you are beautiful. It dictates how you view yourself and how you see yourself. So highly recommended, one of my best favorite reads of all times. The third book is a short story collection by Jamaljan Kochai, and it is one of the best story collections I've read in the past 10 years. I mean, so this was a runner for the National Book Award. I think he was a finalist, and he has a novel before that, but short stories as to be a runner-up to be a finalist in the National Book Award is very, very hard. Most of the time they are novels, and he competed with novels that year. But then this story collection is so full. It has so many different stories in so many different formats. It was just amazing to read. So when it comes to the stories, you have different characters, different places, different setting, and also different formats and styles of writing. So there's a main character here who is a monkey that speaks. I mean, this is how experimental he is in his writing, and he's not just experimenting, he's so good at it, he was able to make it to the National Book Award. And some of the stories were very relatable because they were about displacement, about immigration, about a lot of other things that I experienced in my life or are relevant to my just worldview. But then also the structure of the book was so good. And this is a good book to start if you do not want to commit to a novel and just do short stories. A short story will take you one day to finish. You can even read it in one setting because it's just like 10-20 pages max. And so if you do not want to commit to long projects, long 300 page novels, then starting with a short story collection, you just build that reading stamina first before you delve into bigger books. It is the best place to start. The fourth book is Ragtime by E.L. Doctorow, and the way I discovered E.L. Doctorow was from Ta-Nehisi Coates in an interview where he mentioned E.L. Doctorow is one of his favorite authors. So I read Ragtime for the first time, then I went on and read the rest of his books, and this one in particular, it's set in New York City, and it talks about immigration, racism, and what it means to be American. But then it has a lot of historical fiction, so there are characters like Houdini, like J.P. Morgan, and others that I was not familiar with that I had to like look up. But then it is historical fiction, and this is sort of the genre style of E.L. Doctorow. If you read any of his other books, he is heavy on American history and historical fiction, and it's great because you get to enjoy or be entertained by the storytelling, but also learn about how people lived at the time and what it meant to be alive as a black person, as a Jewish person, or as someone else during that time. So if you are into history and if you are into fiction or novels, then this is a great book to start. Now, the last but not least, In the Distance by Hernan Diaz. And to be quite honest, when I first, this book was a requirement for me during my writing program, and when I first was assigned to read it, I did not want to read it. I avoided it for a while, and then there was a deadline, and then I had to just speed read it, and it blew my mind away. It really did. So it's a Western, and so it's about cowboys and the migration from the West to the East, from California to New York City, but it's much more than that. When you get a Western that starts in another continent and then ends up in America, and then tells you the great migration from California all the way to the other side of the United States, and all the things that happened in between, the race for gold, it was just an amazing story. And the character in the book is almost mythical. He is this big character who, his name is Hawk, but the book talks about his journey to finding his lost brother, who they get separated before taking on the ship that will to take them to New York City. So one brother ended up in New York City and the other brother ended up in California, and so the younger brother went on a journey to find his brother, and in the journey he just met other characters, he learned other things. And the favorite thing that I found in the book is the language, not the language of the book, but the character learning the language, learning English, because that relates to me personally. I learned English when I was 13, and so seeing how he learned English and how he was picking up words and how he was confused, and a lot of times when people spoke too fast, it reminded me of my time during high school when people assumed that I spoke English and would speak to me, or like when I would go to the doctor and he would ask me a question, like I wouldn't know how to answer, and so I would request a translator or an interpreter, and on and on. So if you are into Western novels, then this is a book where, you know, I think I'm very confident that you will like it, because it's not the typical Western novel of cowboys and people on horses, although there is a horse in the book that I very much loved, but it's much deeper, more complex, and it takes Western novels to a different level. And this was published by like a small publishing house. It wasn't even published in one of the major publishing houses, and it was a finalist in the Pulitzer Award. So it's a good book that has proven to be like it's just a great book. So these are the 5 books, and I'm not guaranteeing that if you read any of these books you'll just fall in love with reading again and you will get back to the habit. But what I'm arguing is, if you find books that relate to your experience, that talks to the things that you enjoy talking about, thinking about, researching, lived through, then you will find reading much more enjoyable than reading requirements or reading books because they are in the New York Times bestseller or won awards. Find books that speak to you, and you will find reading much easier, much enjoyable, because I think that's what reading is at the end of the day. Even though if it has a lot of benefits and it's better than like being on social media or whatever the case might be, it is another way of entertainment, and it should be entertaining. It shouldn't be hard. Trust me, I've read Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. It's not a pleasurable experience, although I'm glad that I did it. But reading should be a way of us entertaining ourselves in ways that we like. I would love to know your favorite books, those that you've found yourself reading multiple times or even recommending it to other people. Leave them in the comment section below and I will give them or put them on my list. If you enjoyed this video, then you will enjoy another set of books that I've recommended right here, reading instead of self-help books, because I think self-help books is overrated and sometimes they all say the same thing. Watch it here, and in the meantime, thank you for watching and keep reading.